Hey, what's up, guys? Uh, Back here with the Scarecrow video, and for this video, it's gonna be sped up because I didn't feel like uploading a whole entire 3-hour video, so it's about like 10 minutes, and the whole process is just sped up. And here in this part of the video, I'm just using a G pen, hatching everything in, making sure I get the right textures and rendering it correctly. And rendering isn't just about, the lights and the shadows and all that. It's about the textures and making sure that the textures you have in your drawing are reacting well with each other. It's some of them aren't too distracting and they take detail over another thing that you want to show in your image. And so here I'm just making sure that, and also it may seem like a waste of time to do all this cross hatching before painting over it anyway, but I feel like it adds a layer of what's the word, intricacy, I don't know, but it gives like a level of detail that would be otherwise not seen if you didn't do this or you do it at the end. I feel like it gives like a nice level of um it's just interesting, when you look at the picture closer, you could kind of see the hatching through the painting, and it gives a nice feel and a nice feel for texture also. But yeah, you can see here I'm just, continuing also the line widths. That's another important thing, making sure that you kind of have that established, because I make the pencils very loose because I like to have this element of randomness when it comes to inking, because you kind of do come up with cooler stuff that way, I feel. But of course, it depends on what you're drawing. Like if you're drawing something very technical, I don't advise um not penciling it really tightly. If it's something technical and is known, like say for example you're drawing a car engine, you can't just make that up. But if you're drawing like a spacecraft that's alien or something, and you don't really, you've never really seen that alien craft before, you could just pencil it loose and then ink it tightly later, and you could come up with whatever kind of machinery you want, and it might look cool. It might not, depending on your luck at that in that situation. But yeah, here it's the stuff I'm drawing in this picture here, it's not too concrete, right? It's not stuff that's you know, that has to be drawn precisely 100%, but I tried my best, and inking it here with an element of randomness, and it gives like a nice effect later. But yeah, here you could see like also the line widths are one of the main focuses, and figuring out where to keep the light and where to keep the dark, right? Here you could see I focused on the deepest part of his clothing, which is like whatever undershirt he has underneath the jacket and his coat, right? It's really dark. And here I'm just shading in the inside of the jacket. It makes it look, it stands out. It feels like you're looking at different parts, different planes of it, right? And here I'm just going to go in with the regular brush and darken some things up, thicker line work, just to make everything stand out more. But yeah, you begin to see the head pop out more. It looks more cylindrical, I guess. But yeah, and also another reminder, here I'm using acrylic ink because sometimes I'm afraid if I use a non-acrylic based ink, it kind of it gives a shine to my work, and I really don't like that. And so here I'm also doing ink washes, making sure that the lighter parts of the picture stand out more. I'm trying to really get the values right before because I didn't know if I was going to paint it with color in the end. I wasn't 200% sure about that. But here when you kind of establish the values and which part should be light and which part should be dark, when you do this in the early stages of inking, it really helps you to focus in and lock in on the parts that you need to later, and to really focus and hone in on the details and everything. But yeah, here you can see I'm going in with the color pencil, adding in some more depth into it, making sure that the mask stands out more. Yeah, and then yeah, more dark, and then yeah. I mean, that's pretty much for an explanation for this part here. There isn't much of a explanation, but yeah, it's keeping everything nice and, established. Like, you gotta make sure that the design is standing out. And then here I was contemplating like which part should be more like if I should darken the whole piece or not. And here I started to use charcoal, and I realized that the face does stand out more along with that jack-o'-lantern thing that he's holding. I'm not sure what that is, but it stands out more the more graphite I was using and more charcoal dust I was using on the thing. And here I also tried to make it focus more on that grin that it had and try to make the hat be more solid. Here you could see I'm using ink wash on it. And yeah, I realized like I had to make his shape stand out more. And the more I could do that, the more solid he looked, and that's a good thing. So yeah, here you can see more charcoal was being used in the whole piece, and then I would smear it around with uh you know water and ink, and then I would go on top of the parts that need more darkening with a color pencil and see how more solid it begins to look. Yeah, and here I used white for the hair and stuff, and then I started to add in highlights and stuff, and that's when stuff began to really you know uh pop up. Yeah, here you can see that bat skull over there, the teeth and all the highlights on it. It begins to make it pop more. So it looked cooler that way. And the hat too, giving it more edges, right? So for the edges of the shapes, make sure that the highlight bounces in a way off of them, you know? Because it's really the edges of stuff that really have a lot of white, right? You look at like a lot of shapes, when you bounce light onto them, it's the surface and the edges that really accentuate the where the light is really accentuated on them, you know. Here I'm going back with more charcoal, darkening everything up because some of the light did seem too light, and so I wanted to keep balancing it. And that's why in the beginning I really focused on the values and the main shapes, just to make sure later on when I begin to like mess around with it, it could change. I mean, I could change it comfortably, I could tweak it however I want to and all that. But yeah, you could see here adding more lines for the hair and all that stuff, and focusing on the detail and the textures of like the buttons and stuff. And yeah, and also you begin to realize how the jack-o'-lantern thing begins to glow more. So yeah, that was one of the main things that I wanted, was to make sure that thing looks like it's glowing. And so darkening the rest of the piece up, right, did that. And also, see the charcoal background? Now I'm beginning to add like a smoke kind of fume type texture into the air, because I wanted the fumes to pop out of the skull. I mean, the jack-o'-lantern thing here. And so I made it a little bit more darker on the outside, and going towards the mouth, it begins to brighten up, and his nails would also pick up some of that light. You could see here adding some more light to the parts that would be kind of facing this jack-o'-lantern or its fumes, because I'm going to draw the fumes now. See, beginning to add them with the color pencil, and I'm going to add some acrylic to it, yeah, and then just smear it around a bit. Because the trick with smoke is that you come up with like a foggy shape first, and then you put in like the thicker pieces of gas that that'll be in there. So the thicker the gas, the more solid it begins to look. So yeah, and as gas begins to dissipate, it gets less solid. So you could kind of see that in the fumes that I was drawing here. But yeah, these markers here, the acrylic ones, when you use them by the side of the tip, it makes thinner lines, and you could see I did that for the hair and for the thinner type lines that I'm working on. Yeah, here I was using the super white, the what was it called? It's some type of whiteout, but it doesn't dry really well when you use stuff on top of it. So I leave it for the end for the really bright whites, right? And so for his eye here and the jack-o'-lantern's mouth. So yeah, it pretty much began to look finished here. And yeah, I was pretty happy with the way it turned out.